Alright, good morning everyone. It is currently 7:06 on Saturday morning, September 28th, I think, or 26th. Let me see here. It's the 28th. Been driving since about 6 this morning. We have a few more hours to go. I believe the GPS says that we'll get there around 9:30. We are going to pick up a 2005 Honda CRF450. This engine is locked up. The seller was a big dune rider, and just from talking to him over Marketplace and over text, it sounds like when he went onto the dunes the last time, he said that he wasn't like babying it, obviously, because you're on the dunes, but he also like wasn't super punishing it either. And basically the gist of what I understand happened to it is he was just riding it and it sounded really, really bad, and so they cut the chain off because I guess it was locked in gear. And so essentially after he like shut it off because it was sounding bad, and then it was puking coolant, and then all of a sudden he got it towed back to camp, and then when he went to go kick it over, it was locked up, and that's all he knows. So this thing's probably going to need an entire engine rebuild, but you know, that's besides the point. We like doing those are fun. Anyways, he had it posted for 800. I offered him 650, and he said that somebody else had offered 7 and was gonna come get it. This was yesterday. And so I said, hey man, I can do 750. And he said, okay, when do you want to come get it? And I was gonna go get it yesterday, but I guess he had to work. So it's the next day, and we woke up early so that we can get down there. It's about 4 hours from where I live, this guy. So we're definitely buying it. Not gonna drive 4 hours just to check it out. So going to do a little time lapse of the drive, hopefully, and then I'll try to film as much as I can when I get there, just so you guys have a little insight as to what I see when I get there, and you know what condition the bike is in. So what can you tell me about it?
2005 CRF450. I bought it for myself for my 17th birthday, and rode it for about 3 years, and finally at the last trip, she ended up croaking.
Yeah. So what happened on like the last trip?
Dude, we were sending some jumps, and we got to about, I don't know, we probably hit it 10 times. I look out, and we're puking a little bit of coolant, so let her sit for a minute, started back up, keep hitting it, and then it ran great. Went to the beach, had some fun with the boys, and on the way back, like I said, we came up on that side-by-side that needed some help, and shut it off.
And then she just wouldn't kick over after that?
Again. I wish I could kick it over for you, it sounded like just metal shaving and grinding and whatnot. It did not sound very good.
When you bought it, did it have this FMF pipe on it?
It had the FMF header, but it had a mega bomb, and it was at the mounting bracket right here. It was like already really damaged and whatnot. So the slip-on is not what I bought the bike with, but the header, yeah.
Cool.
Sure. Dude, I'm sad to see it go. I really wanted to.
So seller did include 2 additional tires in the chain right there. As you kind of heard in the video, he actually ended up being a really cool guy, but he told me that the clutch had 2 rides on it, the forks had 2 rides on it, the sprockets and chain had new 2 rides on it. So he basically said that this thing has a whole bunch of aftermarket parts, and they just have no time on it, but he started to feel a little weird trying to start it. So let's try to kick this thing over and see where we get. We'll start with the choke out. Try choke in. Sounds like it wants to, but no dice. But the piston is definitely free, and it sounds okay. So don't think it's a top end issue at all. Probably bottom end. But let's get it into the shop and see if we can take this thing out and see if we can get this thing running. So we're gonna take the plastics off. And essentially my plan with this is to kind of go through a little bit, take the plastics off, take the seat off, see what the gas looks like. I'm sure the gas is fine because he said that it was a transmission issue, so that's what we're gonna do now. All right, here's what the air box looks like. Looks like he does have a good filter on there. This looks like a pretty beefy aftermarket filter, but tons and tons of sand in there. I mean, he was a dune rider, so it makes sense. But yeah, so, I mean, good thing we got an air filter on there. Yeah, let's go ahead and check the gas flow now. Fuel looks good, no water in it. All right, let's go ahead and get this drain bolts out. He said that it was having transmission problems, and it does kind of feel like the transmission is locked up. So that should be first, and it won't move. That should be neutral. Still won't move. So yeah, we're gonna need to tear into this bottom end and figure out why the transmission won't move. Folks, I just pulled this engine mounting bolt out and just look at how rusty this thing is. It took forever to get out.
I tried cranking on it, I tried torquing on it, and it just would not budge. So just when stuff like that happens, I just take a torch. Got the old trusty butane torch and an impact, and luckily I was able to free this thing out. But that's why anti-seize and grease is really important on these things. I mean, just look at how messed up those threads are. It was all rusted together. So hopefully the next person who buys this bike, if they ever need to take it apart, they can just get the bolts right out. So far we've gotten the engine out of the bike, and going to take this stator cover off. All was fine, and I thought that the stator puller that I had for my 2010 was gonna work, but you guys can see different threads. So of course nothing can go easy. We're gonna have to order a new stator puller for this model in order to get this stator off. You can also use a bearing puller, which I might try because they have some at Harbor Freight. Essentially what happens is it's got like teeth like this, and it's got a center pin, and as you tighten down, it's kind of the same concept, except instead of threading on, it like has teeth that grab like this, and when you thread, it pushes this forward. So we're gonna have to get one of those, unfortunately, but yeah. All right, so I jimmy rigged up this case puller onto this flywheel because I don't have the correct flywheel size. So I just want to preface by saying this is a terrible idea. I'm probably gonna break my my case puller, but you know, whatever. Here we go. Hey, look at that. It worked. There we go. Woo! All right, so you need a special nut to get this off. It's like a castle nut or something. I didn't have one, so I just kind of like lined up a decent sized socket here, and then I marked where I needed my lines. I was using a grinder, so it didn't turn out that great, but let's see if it works. Hopefully it works. I need a large sized. All right, I'll try with the impact. Would help if I had a battery. I was wondering why this thing felt light. Would you look at that? Ended up working. Side note, I'm probably never going to use this socket. Well, I'll keep it handy for this, but this is just kind of like a throwaway socket. I have a like a cheap socket set here, and a couple of them have broken already, so that's kind of just like my backup socket set. So, you know, hopefully I never am going to need a 20 millimeter again, but they're starting to separate a little bit. Come on. Well, after pounding on this thing for about an hour, I finally freaking got the cases split. This counterbalance gear was having some problems coming out. So, not exactly sure. Oh, crap. There goes the transmission washer. But the transmission really is what I'm most interested about, because I do believe that that's what the problem with this bike was. I think it had something to do with the transmission. So don't forget your oil pump. It doesn't look too bad. Shift drum. A little bit of RTV on there. Should clean up. Let's take a look at our forks and our these things. Can't remember what they're called. They don't look bad. Again, our ears on our forks really don't look bad at all. Usually, when you have transmission issues, these ears will wear off. And that'll cause your transmission to like shift poorly. But I'm not seeing any real sign of wear in the forks on the teeth or on the ear here. Let's get our crank out. Crank bearing. Oh, did we lose a tooth? I think we just lost a... Oh, that's our keyway. There we go, don't want to lose that. but the crank looks okay. Tiny bit of side-to-side play, but nothing to be concerned about really. All right. Now let's get down to the brass tacks here. See what's going on with this transmission. Oh, there's a washer and a gear and the spline that goes on it. Oh yeah, you can see some looks like some transmission wear here. Looks like we don't have any broken teeth. But without a parts diagram, I can't really tell if this is put back together correctly or if this is in the correct order. So I will need to get out a diagram and individually inspect each one of these gears in order to be able to tell. So I'll do that real quick. Alrighty, so essentially what I did was I went through both of these transmission shafts, and I looked at the parts diagram here and made sure that everything was in place, all the washers were there. This is really not that hard to do. I just go to Google and search 2005 Honda CRF450 parts diagram, and I usually go to Partzilla because it's nice, because if I'm missing something I can just order it right there. They also have an option for, like, when you go back on this page, you can click on whatever you want. So I just go to transmission because that's what I'm concerned about right now, and then boom, it's got the transmission right there, and it allows you to see all the parts that you need. So next thing I did was make sure that these bearings are both free, and they are. Although this one's a little crusty and not moving right now, what I did was I stuck the case on its side, and then I put that one in and then that one in and just twisted it around and made sure that both of these bearings are free, and they are. This shift drum bearing is also free, so all the bearings are good, the transmission is good, so I think we should be good to put this back in. I'm gonna clean up this edge surface with a razor knife and then get some gasket maker on there, and then yeah, start putting it back together. All right, so I'm pretty sure I figured out what the problem is. See that little gap, or see that little metal thing right there? And there's a little metal thing right there on the inside. Well, that's a collar that this gear is supposed to spin on. And I just pulled this chunk of metal out from underneath there. So that collar was completely toast. And you can also see, look at how discolored this counter shaft is. You see the bluing? That means that it was getting really hot, which means that this gear was just completely smoked. So basically, we have encountered a new problem now. This gear won't come off. I've tried hammering it. I've tried putting WD-40 down it, and it just won't come off. So my plan is to go get a bearing puller, one of the ones that kind of clamps up from underneath and then presses down on top, and see if I can pull this bearing out. We will need to buy a replacement bearing for the inside, but I'm on Partzilla right now. Let's see how expensive that is. So that is number 21, and that costs $3.70. So hopefully we can get that ordered. And crazy enough, I have a spare 2005 transmission, but of course it's locked. And look, you can see some discoloration on this. So the person who sold this probably smoked this transmission and then sold it on eBay as a good transmission, even though that this inner one right here won't spin at all. And I'll tell you what, guys, I've been spending hours on this thing, hours trying to get this transmission to work, putting it in the case, taking it out, putting it back in, turning it, seeing why it won't shift through the gears, seeing why it gets locked up. And it's because of this inner little piece right here is completely fried on both of them. I'm sure I could make this one work, but I mean, look at the slop in that. That's unacceptable. So we're gonna have to fix that. Alrighty, folks, so we have the 2005 CRF450 transmission here. I pulled this gear off, and this is supposed to spin freely on this counter shaft here. However, it was completely stuck, and you can see it's all corroded in there. And if you look, you can't really see on film, but there's some discoloration on these dogs right here, which tells me that right here the gear got really hot. So it would make sense that this gear was stuck on there. So my attempt to get this back on is going to involve putting it in a lathe here, and then I'm going to use a little strip of, this is what, 160? 600. Or 600 strip sandpaper. I'm going to turn it on and hopefully just sand this down, try to get it as smooth as possible, because you can see there's some grooving in here. And kind of the same deal with the inside of this gear here. I'm just going to try to make them as smooth as possible, and so this gear will slide back on, and then hopefully that should solve the issue. So for the inside of the gear, we kind of already did a little bit off camera, but I'll show some on camera. We're just taking this Dremel with a sand bit on it and just trying to Dremel out as much of this inside as we can without marring it and making it too uneven. So. We'll check and see if that worked. And it slides. There we go. That's what we're looking for. So there is a washer that goes right there, and then there's a clip washer that holds this thing in place right there. So this should slide freely. But when it gets binded up on that where the washer is, see, it's all the way against the shaft. It's not supposed to be. It won't move anymore. So we will go ahead and try that and see if that solved our issue. So when trying to put the transmission back in this guy, unfortunately, there was an extra washer right here on this bearing, and I was going to tighten the cases back together to see, you know, I thought that I had the transmission all back together, and I didn't notice that there was an extra washer right there. So when I went to go put the cases on and tighten the bolts down, you can already tell it's bad news. This bearing got like so tight because since there was too much space, basically like shot this bearing out of this case, and this is actually part of the aluminum case here. And then this bearing is like obviously not good to go anymore. So luckily, I was able to order another case up, and look at how immaculate this thing is. It's actually kind of insane how clean this is. So I picked this guy up on eBay for, I think, $400, the complete case. You can tell that they sandblasted it, and it just looks super clean. So I think this is gonna make the bike look a lot cleaner anyways. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and throw the transmission back in this guy. I gotta inspect all of these gears and seals and stuff like that, but if everything checks out, then we're gonna go ahead and try to put it back together. So we finally freaking got it. So as you are watching this, I'm spinning the output shaft over here, and it's spinning this. So that tells me that we're in first gear. So if we try to go up any more gears, we can't go up any more gears. So let's try to go find neutral. We'll go down half a click. So that should be neutral. So now what should happen is I should be able to hold this shaft right here, and on the other side, spin this output shaft and be completely fine. And right now the output shaft is spinning freely, so that's neutral. So then will come another gear down, and now when I spin the output shaft, it's spinning this clutch basket shaft, so that should be second gear. That should be third gear, and there you hear it click. This should be fourth gear. There you hear it go. This should be fifth gear. So we got all the gears to move. So now we just got to take this case back apart and throw the crank and the oil pump and everything in there. So huge win, because I've been battling this thing forever. Didn't want to bore you guys with the hammering and cutting out and precision and stuff, but this is the final product. I made this gasket. It took quite a long time. I don't think there's really any easy way to make a gasket like this. You just kind of have to take the sheet and go over it, and then I just kind of like peeled up the edges and then like made an incision and just kind of followed it with my razor knife here. I would recommend getting an X-Acto knife because it's just a little bit finer of a tip so that you can really like get around those corners. Because like you can see on like some of the circular sections, like right there, it's kind of like all chewed up. It'll do the trick, but definitely preferred to have like a smaller, easier thing to work with. But you know, I'm pretty happy with the way that it turned out. I think it's going to do the job. A big key to the success for this was these Harbor Freight punches. They have a little indent on the end that's a circular bit. So I just went around and took my little dental pick and I picked at where each one of the case bolt holes are. I made a little point through the gasket, and then when I was the very last step, I pulled the gasket off and then used that punch and just punched out all the holes. So I think this should solve our problem. Torqued all of the engine case bolts down to 7 foot-pounds. We got our oil pump in here, and as you guys can see, it spins freely, so that's what we want. And then same thing with the crankshaft. Spins great. So if you're ever reassembling an engine and you can't get it to spin when you tighten down your case bolts, and you used RTV instead of a gasket, that little thickness of the gasket is just enough to make it so when you tighten your engine bolts, your oil pump and your crank won't have enough clearance. So you gotta have a gasket in there, otherwise, at least on these CRFs, otherwise it just won't spin. It'll be too tight. I don't want to bore you guys with the whole engine reassembly part, but the seller did say that the clutch, I think, only had either 1 or 2 rides. And I mean, just look at the condition of these plates. They're phenomenal. So that is always nice when you have fresh parts on your bike and you know that they're good to go. So, so far I haven't had any troubles putting this thing back together. I had to do a little bit of cleaning of the stator and the stator cover, but that was relatively straightforward. So right now we're just kind of chugging along, putting everything back together, and we should have this baby all back together soon. Right, so we did some off-camera work. It took us quite a bit of time to check the valve clearances and to lash them correctly. Essentially, it's just a very long process. There's supposed to be a formula that you can use to figure out what your clearance is and what shim you have in there. However, the shims that were in there were like all rubbed off and worn off. So unfortunately that made it a little bit difficult. So we just kind of resorted to the trial and error method. So you guys can kind of see here the intake was 0.16 millimeters plus or minus 0.03, the exhaust 0.28. So what I did was just like drew a circle for both of the intakes and exhausts, and then I measured the first clearance, and this one was actually pretty spot on. And then this one, for this valve clearance, we actually couldn't even get a feeler gauge in there. It was so tight. So we kind of just took that one out and just threw like a super small one in just so we could get some sort of number on here. And then we ended up with 0.3. And so then we just kind of worked our way down every time. And same kind of situation with this one. Couldn't get a reading on it with my shim kit, or with my feeler gauge set. So just threw a small one in there and then worked my way up to 0.28. So all of the valves are good to go. The engine is all reassembled, and look at how nice those cases looks on there. Still got to take a razor knife and cut this back, which I'll probably do after I film this. And then we have the bike here. So she is, another tidbit of information. He said that is a brand new carburetor, and it literally only has one ride on it. He installed it on the dirt bike to go on this dunes ride, and then the bike kind of gave out. So I haven't touched the carb, and I don't think I should need to. So the plan now is to just kind of take the engine, stick it back in the bike, get everything hooked up, get all the wires hooked up, and then hopefully give this guy a start. But also noticed that this kill switch is a little janky here. So, and we have some disconnected wires down here, so I'll have to figure out what those go to. I think those should be those are the kill switch wires. So we got to re-hook those up and then redo some of the electrical. And yeah, this baby should be ready to rock here soon. All right, I'm gonna add this part in just to potentially save somebody some headache. If you're ever trying to put a basically 2000s, early 2000s to like 2013, 2014 CRF450 engine in, take off the water pump and take off the radiator hose that goes through and down and on the other side, and take off the head cover for the engine. You guys can kind of sound, I'm out of breath. Basically, I just spent like 30 minutes trying to get this thing in here, and if you've ever done that as like a one-man show, it's not fun. So essentially take those things off. It'll be much easier to get this thing back in. What you want to do is orient the cylinder. Like if you're coming in this way, orient the cylinder on the front side, and you want to like turn it down and like fish it up so that it goes up inside here. And then you can kind of wiggle the back end and slide it in, and then kind of wiggle it into place. That was way easier. I spent like 20-25 minutes working on this thing with the head on, with the water pump on, with that hose through. And then as soon as I took those three things off, it legitimately took me maybe 30 seconds to get this engine in here. So if you're ever trying to put this thing back together, do that. So here she is, all assembled. I took a Sharpie, as you guys just saw, and kind of filled in the lettering on the side there. And man, I'm really, really happy with the way that she cleaned up. I think the black plastics on there look really good. Yeah, I was thinking about getting a graphics kit, but I think I'm probably just gonna try to sell it as is, but we'll walk around for you. I just refilled the stator and flywheel cover with oil, and so that's topped off. And I, for the life of me, cannot figure out where I put that cap. It's gotta be in this garage somewhere, so. I don't know if you guys can see that, but that water that's dripping down in between the head and the cylinder, that's coolant. So that is not good. It's a good thing we caught that though, because if we were to run this thing for very long, it would probably burn up the engine. So obviously not super ideal, but that's okay. We'll just go ahead and take off the head, and it probably just needs a new head cover gasket, but just kind of annoying. Got to take it off again, and all of our hard work. But you know, that's kind of how it goes with these things. If you're ever trying to get a project bike and you think that it's going to go easy, you run into a lot of things that are super unexpected. And like, that's the one thing, there's like no such thing as like a quick flip, because you get to working on it and then you notice like one thing's wrong. And then like, for example, the case that I was trying to put the transmission back into, when I tightened it down, there was an extra washer there and it broke. And so I don't know, I think if you're like an experienced mechanic and like you do this day in and day out, then yeah, probably it would be a quick flip. But like that, it wasn't leaking before, and I'm not exactly sure why it would be leaking now. I torqued all the head bolts to spec and I put a gasket in there, so I don't know, but just to be safe, we'll go ahead and take off the head and redo that. But obviously I'm a little disappointed because I really wanted to take this thing out for a ride, but gotta do it the right way. All right, here's the new versus the old gasket. You can see it's in pretty tough condition. Probably hasn't been changed for quite some time. All right, so we changed the head gasket and we got everything torqued back. So on your guys' side, should only be a few minutes, but for me, it's been like 2 days because I had to order the new head gasket and I overnighted it. So it's been some time. We refilled it up with coolant. So the plan now is to just try to start it back up again and see if everything's in working order. We know that there's an oil leak over here on the stator and flywheel side, which should be an easy fix. So yeah, here we go. Fuel is on, choke is on. right, so I'm kind of being like hopefully optimistic here. The stator side gasket actually looks like it's in okay condition. You can see that there's a little bit missing right here. And then there's a big piece missing right here. And that's primarily where the oil leak is coming from, right underneath this sight window. So what I've done is cut a little piece of my gasket material that I have. And I'm just gonna kind of put a little piece right there. And I'm gonna put a little RTV on it as well, get it coated up on both sides. And I'm hoping that the RTV will make it stick to the case here. That way when I go to put the case back on, it'll just be in perfect position. So this is kind of my jerry-rigged way, so we'll see if this works. Okay, so we got the little splice of that gasket on the stator cover. Fuel is on, choke is on. So ideally, what we're looking for here is start it up and have no issues with leaking oil. And that will be a success for us. So let's go ahead and hop on here and see if we can get her started. See if we fix that oil problem. Ow. Ouch. That hurt pretty bad. That hurt really bad. That's gonna wrap it up for this video. I hope that you guys enjoyed the whole process of buying this thing and then getting it home and figuring out what was wrong with the transmission and getting it all fixed and put back into the bike. I can go into more detail on like the engine side of things, just depending on what you guys want. I know personally, like when I'm watching videos, I kind of skip over some of that stuff and I kind of want to just like figure out what's wrong with it and yada yada. So, you know, everyone has their own flavor of stuff, but you know, for right now, I think that this is working for me. But overall, bought it for $750, put 400 into cases, 110 on plastics, and then 50 on the cylinder and head gasket because it was overnighted. So overall, in at about $1,250, and we'll get this guy listed up for, I don't know, maybe like 2,000. 2,000 would be really good if we could get that, but I'm just not sure. I would be pretty happy even if I sold it at like, you know, 1,850, 1,900. You know, just make like a little $700 profit somewhere in there. But I learned a lot on this bike. One very costly mistake is, you know, completely verify that you have all the washers and like there's none stuck to the case, because essentially that delayed me being able to sell this, and it cost me like $400, which was like more than half of what the bike itself cost. So yeah, very happy with the way that it turned out. I love the black plastics. I think it looks super cool. On video, I was only able to get it into third gear, but I did test ride it and got through all fifth, and it shifted just fine, and it sounded really healthy. The engine sounded really good. So we will be happy to have to send this off to somebody else, and hopefully this bike can continue on its life and make somebody else really happy. So that's gonna do it. Hope you guys enjoyed, and stay tuned for next video.